Item 4, SP CAM 16-181, 15, 19, 21, and 23, A plus B plus C, West Main Street or Josh Street extension, type of volume.
I'd like to make a motion to schedule that for public hearing.
Richard Roberts, our attorney, to be here. This is a big issue in the town of Clinton. I'd like members to at least be educated about, including myself, including me, about what we should and should not be doing in general, but especially regarding this application or applications like this.
Okay. I guess there are a couple of basic points that the chairman and the staff thought it was worth having you come here to mention. One is, because it's a site plan application, you can, as a commission, decide if there is a sufficient, public interest in it, schedule a public hearing. Two things to bear in mind if you do schedule a public hearing. One is that it does not extend the time period within which you must act. Because it's a site plan application, you have 65 days to act, including any public hearings. If after the 65 days have expired, you have not taken action on the application, it's automatically approved. Second thing to keep in mind is if you have a public hearing, that doesn't change the criteria or the analysis or the things that you as a commission have to evaluate when you're looking at the application. You have to review the site plan application in accordance with Section 8 of the zoning regulations. The use has already been determined as a matter of zoning comprehensive plan to be permitted in the zone, so that any discussion that you have as a commission, any comments that come out during the public hearing, any analysis, have to be the specific items that are listed in Section 8 of the regulations with regard to traffic circulation within the site, the dumpsters, sanitation, utilities, and so forth. You can't kind of morph it into a special exception or a zone change and take the more subjective discretionary factors into consideration that you would if it was an application other than a site plan. So you can't necessarily say this is going to adversely affect property values, other than very specific issues related to how the site is laid out. You can't say it's going to adversely affect traffic. You can't say that it's going to be inconsistent with the district. So because the application as it's presented doesn't require any special exception or other unique treatments, and you're kind of bound by a very finite list of things that you can consider in the course of evaluating the application. And that's why, having a public hearing on it is probably good, in the sense of, you're responsive to the community, you hear what people have to say. Unfortunately, because it's a site plan application, you may very well have to ignore a lot of things that people have to say. So it's kind of a, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing, because the criteria that you have to use to evaluate a site plan application are much more objective and narrower than is the case with a special permit or a zone change. I think the same analysis would hold true for the CAM application. There are very specific things that you would have to look for there, given the development of the site and the existing development of the site and the places around it. You may not have a whole lot to talk about there. I think one other thing that is worth mentioning is that because this is something that you have reviewed in another context already as a commission, when you're going into the site plan review and the public hearing, you essentially have to start with a clean slate and listen to what the applicant has to say, listen to what the public has to say, and review it in the context of the site plan regulations and the regulations that apply to it, and then not necessarily piggyback any prior conversations or public hearings or testimony about the application, because it has to be treated as a new one, so that all of the discussion about the current application should take place at your meetings, at that public hearing, and at the deliberation meeting that follows. I don't know whether that is helpful or not. Whether you have any other questions, concerns?
I got a question. Forget part of this. Forget the application. That land in the POCD that we all worked on, and according to CME and everybody else, that land, that piece of property was supposed to be transit-oriented property. That's what it was in our POCD. And we end every one of our applications with, is consistent with the POCD. Now I'm being told the POCD doesn't mean nothing. We worked 180 questions, I put so many hours into it, and I'm told that it doesn't mean a damn thing. Is that true?
Well, I don't think it's utterly meaningless, but I think you just kind of have to look at the hierarchy of the documents that you have to review when you're examining an application. POCD is one of them. That's kind of an advisory guidance document, but your decisions have to be based on what's called the comprehensive plan, which is the combination of the zoning regulations and the zoning map.
Correct.
If you were adamant about implementing the policies that you had put in your plan of conservation and development, you can do that by amending your regulations to require that it be transit-oriented uses or something like that.
If you look at the property and look at our POCD, that particular property, that particular piece is POCD. Just like we have in other parts of the town, historical. This is historical. This is only historical. This is this. This is that. So, and we always end every one of our meetings, or applications with, is it consistent with the plan of conservation development? So now, I just want to know, is that piece of property transit-oriented, that it was deemed that, is in the POCD that, I don't get it.
If you have a conflict between the zoning regulations and the zoning map on one hand and the POCD on the other hand, the zoning regulations and the zoning map trump the POCD until you amend the regulations to match that.
Unfortunately, the POCD has become a tool for both sides. So we have this argument, and I've tried to tell people that it's a guide. I guess I get lambasted by calling it a guide, and that it's not a legal binding document. The problem I have with it is when we go into debates, one side can pull for things that they see in the POCD, and the other side can pull out for more. I get how you could use that in a special exception, a little bit more than a regulation. The problem I have is that even if I don't like something that has to happen, I feel like if these are the rules we created, even if I don't like them, and the applicant meets the regulation, meets the rules, shouldn't we, are we obligated, and I don't know the answer, to say, yeah, you met the rules. I'm sorry the regulation says this at this time, maybe we can, if we do this all the time, we don't like that regulation, therefore let's change the regulation. That's why we have a regulations committee. I think there's often the theory that this POCD is now our Bible, that you know, yes, we end a lot of things with, and is consistent with the POCD, which may be symbolic. But when it comes down to what we're supposed to be doing, I mean, I think I heard you loud and clear that it's going to, you know, the regulation is going to trump the POCD, that you shouldn't be making a decision based on the POCD.
Well,
The
that-
regulation is.
Yeah, I mean, that is true with a site plan. I think with a special
With a
exception,
site plan.
you have to look and see, you know, because you've got all the more subjective criteria, whether it's in harmony with the neighborhood, whether it's in keeping with you know, conservation and development and so forth. But until the uses and so forth catch up with the POCD, the more specific regulations that apply in a site plan context would be the ones that govern.
So wouldn't the POCD help us, you know, help guide us in how we write our regulations?
That's the idea. I mean, you want them all to be consistent.
Okay,
So,
I'm lost.
we're going to criticize the plan of conservation development that was approved last year. We've had a year to implement some of these regulation changes. We've got the Unilever report. This commission unanimously voted to implement the regulation changes and the rezoning of Unilever months ago. That's not been done because the consultant planner was not given the task. We've got a master plan for the downtown that was brought up a year ago. There's potential grants for that. That was altered. We have a master plan RFP that's been sitting here waiting to get done. Waiting to get done and brought to the Board of Selectmen that would have changed the zoning regulations and the zone map to allow for design standards that would have set criteria for distances, density, everything that's been an issue for the past year with applications. So don't tell me that now the POCD means nothing.
Yeah,
Because
that-
it's a lack of initiative of this
Hold
commission
on.
to bring forward any planning.
It's kind of a separate issue than why I had Richard
Absolutely.
Roberts here. I had him here, yes, that may all be true. But I have him here that when we are voting, when people elected us to vote, are we doing what we are legally obligated to do? Not, did we drop the ball over there or drop the ball over there? But is it fair to this applicant, or any applicant that comes before us, and I wanted to clear this up once and for all about what the POCD is. Are we legally obligated to follow the POCD or the regulation in our decision on something like a site plan? Not a special exception, a whole nother ball of wax. I think we've all heard loud and clear what the answer is. And we may not like it. I may be on the other side of the issue someday and not want to vote for something, but I'm legally, you know, I'm going to be a voting member soon.
All right, so if we're stuck, and that's nothing to do with CVS, any building, any building that goes there. So the guy that's gonna come in and offer us everything, all bed of roses. Now he's changing the design. We just got it. I got a letter from Eric, I got a letter from John, I got a letter from everybody. They just got received to this. They haven't even had time to look at it, but it's here in front of us tonight. You know what I mean? So that's kind of bad.
Why?
It's very bad. Because we should have had time to look at it. And then the design review board that was, the design review board that spoke to them said that's no good. They don't like that. They don't like that design. So now we're looking at a cinder block building. Now we're looking at a block building.
Eddie, you voted no.
Huh?
I voted no.
We voted no because of the
voted no.
POCD, Gary.
You're
The
talking about a
PO
different application, that's a different
Yeah,
application.
different application, but I'm just saying, if we vote on something and we had a charrette, we had everything, that parcel was supposed to be transit oriented. That's the only reason I voted no. It's not historic, I don't care what anybody says. I'll take you down there. Wait,
I don't want to start the public hearing.
I'm not doing a public hearing, I'm just telling you,
Let's not talk about that anymore.
I'm talking
leave it
about
at
the
this.
POCD. Is it, we're gonna use it or not use
Eddie.
it? Because if not, we're not gonna use it. might as
Mr.
well bring it up
Alberino.
anymore.
Mr. Alberino, we have heard loud and clear, the public has heard loud and clear, that the regulation is the law and that the POCD is the guide.
I have a
Make
question.
your own decisions at this table, vote however way you want. But that's what's happening.
I have a question for our legal consultant, if I may.
granted everything that you've said. I've read everything myself, and I understand that's the law. Have there been instances in which a site plan has been rejected, appealed, and that appeal has not been upheld? Because is there any way that communities have had a successful argument? I'm sure we're not the first community that's in this position. Are there any alternatives? Is there case law?
Yeah, and I think what you need to do is look at Section 8 of the regulations, apply it to the application as presented, and, make a determination as to whether that site plan as presented complies with the specific criteria that are set forth in the regulations. It's got, a whole bunch of, it's got 6 specific sections on driveway access. It's got another section on existing street. It's got 4 criteria on drainage and so forth. So, within the confines of what is in your regulation and how you interpret those words, how you evaluate a plan in light of those requirements, if you make a good faith determination based on your interpretation of those regulations and the plans that are submitted, that it does not comply, you can legitimately deny it. And if there is substantial evidence in the record to support your decision, you should be upheld.
Another question regarding section 32. I don't know if you reviewed the consultant planner's report. He had questions regarding the design standards that currently exist on the books and whether or not the application is supported or not. How do you uphold that in terms of the site plan?
I don't know, I didn't look at section 32, so I don't know at what point your design standards are triggered, whether they're in site plan, whether they're for all applications, whether they're just for special exceptions. But if it's something that by their language, are applicable to site plan reviews, then you can evaluate the plans in accordance with those. I guess I would be reluctant to tell you that something that is purely aesthetic would be the best basis on which to, evaluate and deny an application. So, if section 32 is applicable to site plans and it has specific identifiable criteria that are required to be met, you can add those to the mix.
32 states it's applicable to any new construction for which a zoning permit is required.
What was that? Can you say that again?
Any new construction for which a zoning permit is required.
Any other questions?
Can we have our attorney review the consultant planner's report and liaise between the two of them to...
And the engineering report.
I didn't see the engineering report.
Eric, do you feel this is a complete application, or are we missing pieces like DEEP, comment on CAM?
Yeah, we don't have the CAM response yet.
CAM response is not, you can't act on this tonight, but that said, the site plan piece of the application is substantially complete at this point in time. We do have the engineer's report, we do have the planner reporting, the planner indicating would like more time. Again, I had anticipated that there was probably going to be a request for a public hearing. At this point, there's another month to get more information. So there's no urgency to act on this evening. So as far as the technical requirements of the regulations, as far as going through the zoning regulations line by line, yes, they have submitted each item that the zoning regulations requires for a complete site plan application. Do we have all of our consulting reports for the CAM? We are missing the deep response. I know your planner has indicated he would like additional time to review the application.
Carl?
Yes, I read both reports. The consultant basically said, and you had a chance to really
Carl, I gotta
look into it in
Carl,
detail.
I gotta cut you off. Only questions, let's not have our hearing, just
Okay.
questions of the lawyer.
I have an opinion, not a question.
Okay.
Did we get a review from the design review board?
Yes.
Yes.
They have met with them.
Did you send
I
that
have
out?
the minutes.
Never seen
It
that.
was not favorable.
Okay, I just haven't seen it, so.
Yeah, that's pretty much all they said was that they denied it.
That's all it says.
Yeah, there was no,
So it's,
There's no additional language.
no.
so while we can deny based on
They're advisory only.
I have a question that regards the application. I guess it's inappropriate. I'll hold off on it.
Okay. I have one final question for myself, and I just want, this is not even, I just want everybody to hear it loud and clear. I've been saying it for a year. Is anybody allowed, are members allowed to email each other with any business of planning and zoning, regardless of applicant? Are they allowed to email each other?
I think as soon as you start emailing about commission business, you first start creating public documents, and depending on how many people are involved in the emails, you may in fact be having online public meetings. So my general advice is that any email communication between or among the commission members should be limited strictly to ministerial and administrative matters like when should we have the next meeting, are you available for the next meeting, that kind of thing, not getting into the merits of any subject that is the business of the commission. Because, you know, as innocent as it may be, Freedom of Information Commission has a completely different view of the world. They have the ability to levy fines. So I think kind of my starting point for advice to any commission I represent is that any communication by email outside of specific things like, you know, are we going to be able to have a quorum for the meeting tonight? If not, what night is good for you? Unless there is another specific exemption found in the Freedom of Information Act, is problematic and should be avoided.
Okay, the second part of my question. If members get together and form a quorum to discuss the business of the commission, is that legal or illegal?
It would be a violation of the Freedom of Information Act.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. What triggers a piece of business of the commission? The formal acceptance by the commission at a meeting? The delivery date of an application? If we don't see that application, we don't know any of the details of that application. What actually triggers the Freedom of Information Act?
I think as a general rule, the Freedom of Information Commission would take a very broad view of what the commission's business is and would not limit their scope to pending applications that either were anticipated to be filed or were being filed. if all of you do a reply to all email about, how you feel about windmills or something like that, it's not in the regulations, nobody's proposing a windmill, but if it is within the jurisdiction of this body, and you start having a conversation about it, I don't think it would be a surprise to me that the Freedom of Information Commission could find that that was conducting the commission's business. I don't think it's limited only to pending applications or applications when the public hearing has been opened or closed or vice versa. I just think it's, whenever it's something that is within the jurisdiction of this commission, regardless of whether there is a pending application or not. I mean, I may be overly conservative in that view, but I'm here to advise you how to protect yourselves.
So if you guys got, if 5, 6 people get together for drinks, go all in the commission, that's a violation.
If they start talking about commission business in a substantive way, it will be a violation. If they get together and talk about the Giants, the Patriots, the weather,
Not just
the zoning
applications.
board of appeals,
Any business, the planning zone, not just applications. All right.
I mean, they're kind of narrow exceptions for things like a caucus of people within one political party. I mean, the legislature put that in so they can do it. It equally well applies to this commission. And I think, labor negotiations, personnel matters, those kinds of things are exceptions from the definition of a meeting. But I think, using email to conduct business outside of a public meeting is problematic.
Mr. Alberino has a question on the POCD, whether it's relevant, not relevant. And he's going to email somebody. How would you suggest he goes about it? Should he email staff directly, copy the chairman? Obviously not email another board member to ask, but what would you think that the correct chain would be?
I think probably the best way to handle that would be to email staff, copy the chairman, and say, I have concerns about the POCD, here they are, and then it can be put on an agenda for a future meeting, or it can be referred to a committee, it can be dealt with in a public forum rather than, when you come to it in your own home. If it is, in fact, commissioned business.
Great. Thank you very much.
Just want to clarify a question about caucus exception.
Question of the caucus, if only,
Only members of the commission who are of the same political party get together, even if it's more than a quorum, that is an exception from the definition of meeting in FOIA. So,
So like
I mean,
a Republican couldn't meet with them.
And no other person present
Democratic
on the
caucus.
commission.
Correct, yes.
No non-member.
right, exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in. I just took mine in case we have any questions.
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to schedule this for a public hearing on January 14th, is that 4th?
At 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but I would ask if you could put in that, would be appropriate to put in that motion with referral to the planning, referral of the newest application to the planning consultant and our engineering consultant.
They've already got it.
They've already got it and
Well,
submitted it.
but I'm not only sending it, and this is a request not only to send it to them, but to ask them to comment, yes.
Yeah, they've already commented.
No, John sent an email out today that he
Had not
just
yet.
received it, and he has
Okay.
no idea about it.
Well,
Same with
He
Eric.
said he doesn't specifically comment on it, but
right, but, well, he's already commented, so he's seen it and he's commented, so, but we'll let him know he has more time. But he-
More time to come.
he
How about,
wants
would
to
it be
see
appropriate to ask them if they have any additional comments?
And DTC is.
friendly amendment too. I would like more clarification on the applicability of section 32.
I accept that.
Yes, I had requested whether or not there could be also correspondence between the consultant plan and an attorney to figure out the relevance of section 32. So we can get either from our attorney's perspective or from the consultant planners, or they liaise together.
If you would like a formal legal opinion, I mean, this is a question of regulation interpretation, so I would suggest you go to your attorney when it's going to something plan.
It's a pretty long motion, but. Is that it? Julie, can you revise the motion to us, please? Write the
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. You say you're bound by the
Excuse me,
regulations.
public-
At some point, you're going to be bound by the will of the
motion.
and you better
There's no
pay
public
attention.
participation, please stop.
I'll say what I want,
No,
what I
you
want
won't
to
have
say.
you removed from the room.
You can have me arrested.
I
How
will.
about that? Good.
Thank you. The motion.
Yes.
The motion to,
Motion is to schedule a public hearing, to receive it and schedule a public hearing, and to have it reviewed by ETC, which Howard and City, right? No, she wanted to have the applicability and relevance of section 32 reviewed, not the application.
Not the application.
The relevance of section 32 to the application, and we'll let DTC and the consultant planner know that they have Silver Fourth.
everybody got that?
And it will sound much prettier when I type it out.
It'll be an illegal document. Any other discussion on the motion?
Now can I comment on what I was talking about before?
Maybe
It's not
not,
the merits of the application.
just the merits of the application, I don't want to get into the application.
Right.
I'm going to stop you if you do.
I think that it's a mistake going through a public hearing, you involve the time frame to make a decision. The town engineer has already looked at it and indicated whatever problems they had with the technical approach to the site plan. The consultant basically said everything looked all right to him, with the exception that he didn't have a chance to look at it in 100%. So my approach would be that we would approve it, all right, subject to the direction from the town engineer.
Any other discussion on that?
Seeing as that I've only just received this document, which is 3 inches thick, I would like some time to review it before we discuss it further.
Well, that's a little bit different than setting it to a public hearing. I
Well,
think his point was that it should go to a public hearing, not necessarily that we take extra time to review the application.
like I said, seeing as I have not even had a chance to read the application, read any of the reports filed, I don't know any of the other commissioners, I don't know when the application was brought forward. Clearly, you've had time to look at it, you liaised with your attorney, I have not, so I would like the opportunity to review the application.
Number one, I have not liaised with our attorney. Number two, I've received all the documents that you've received.
Mr. Chairman, my rebuttal to that. The reason we're debating this because we're saying that the technical people haven't had a chance to review it completely. And now we're going to say that people here that are just regular people that don't have a degree in engineering are going to look at this. I mean, this information is presented to us because it has to be. In the case of these technical things or a site plan, right, it's basically a review by the technical people, our engineers and so on and so forth, and that we respond to that, as opposed to us looking at it and saying, we know more about it than the engineers. It's ridiculous. A waste of time. It happens every time because people like to just stop progress.
Any other discussion?
Call the question.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Tim, Alan, Mike, Chris, Eddie, and Christine. No, sorry, I didn't see your hand. And Adam.
One more
No.
question?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
No, there's a,
To a
Eddie,
certain,
no.
We're in the middle of the
We're in
vote.
the middle of the vote.
oh,
Opposed? Carl, you're. I will abstain. Motion carried.
And I raise a point of order regarding the application. When the applications come before us, they should have a date stamp on them. I understand that the date stamp is put on the original one, but that copy of that original one should be in our hands. We do have closing dates for applications, and we need to be assured that the applications factually came in within those closing dates. And both the applications today don't have date stamps on them.
So what was it, like, can you ask what the date was then for the application?
Yes. It was received in the office on November 28th.